Maybe you just got Logic Pro, or maybe you're thinking about getting it and you just don't know where to start and you want a solid...
Hey, what are you doing?
No.
Come on.
I'm teaching today.
No.
What?
I'm teaching today.
What day is it?
Come on. Get up. Let's go. Come on.
All right. Never mind. I guess I'm not teaching today.
Peace.
Oh boy. Sorry for the mix-up, folks. My name is Johnny, the real Johnny from Internal Rhythm, and today I'm going to teach you Logic Pro.
Internal Rhythm.
Okay, welcome back. I want to start by saying that this video is intended for people new to Logic. Maybe you just got it and you really are having a hard time finding your way around the program. That's who this video is intended for. We're going to cover all the different windows, transport control, zooming options, and a bit more. So I'd suggest you grab a notepad to take notes, and if you can, watch this on a separate device and follow along in Logic Pro. Let's get into it. Okay, so here we are. I opened up Logic and I have just an empty session going. And the first thing you'll see is, there's the main area of Logic, which is referred to as your arrange area. This is where you're going to record to. You're going to do some editing. This is where you sequence everything. You arrange your session, right? So that's pretty standard. If any of you have used any other DAW before, you should be familiar with this. One thing that stands out, and the first window we're going to talk about, is this window right here, which is called the inspector. Right? So your inspector is where you have quick access to whatever track you have selected. Right? So it'll give you the channel strip for the track you have selected. This is where you could easily add effects, set up send buses. You could do a little bit of everything. This is where you could quantize, you could transpose. You could see this window up here, right? It gives you a little bit of everything. And on the left side, you'll see the track you have selected. And then on the right side, you'll see wherever that track is being routed to, right? Right now, there's not much going on in this session, right? It's pretty much empty. But say I had a drum, like a kick drum that was routed to a drum bus. On the right side here, I would see the output of that drum bus, right? So that is our inspector. The one thing to note, the quick keys, right? And that's something I'm going to hammer home. I think it's really important to remember all of these quick keys for these windows. So the first quick key I want you to write down, remember, is I, right? That's your inspector, right? Pretty simple. Right? The next thing I want to show you, and the next window we'll talk about, is the library. Right? So the library is this window over here, and depending what kind of track you have selected will determine what you see in the library. Now, I originally made an instrument track, so this is where I can find Logic's extensive virtual instrument library. Right, you can see synthesizers, strings, organs, keyboards, whatever it may be, right? You have a little bit of everything here. Let's maybe pick out a pad synthesizer. Let's see what we got here. Bring this down. Right, so one thing that I think sets Logic apart is this library. I think the sounds that come with Logic are phenomenal. Again, this is an instrument track, so I'm getting all these virtual instruments, right? But if I had an audio track selected, so let's go ahead and make a new track, and this is probably something worth noting. You could click the plus button up here, or you could do Option, Command, N, and this is your new track menu. And we're not going to get into the session players or pattern, but if I make an audio track, right, which would be if I wanted to record a guitar or vocals, obviously, right? You're gonna have some presets here on the left side now in my library. If I have vocals, and you have all these presets, you know, depending what kind of music you have. Now I'm not gonna engage these. I'll maybe click one, but I'm not gonna input it because I'm using my interface currently for this video. So we don't want any crazy feedback or weird, you know, delay or something, which is gonna definitely throw me off. But you can see when I click this preset, it added all of these plugins directly on that track, right? So I really think, you know, the library and the inspector, this combination is really good for kind of finding your stuff. And the quick key I want you to remember for the library is going to be the letter Y, right? Y will make this come and go. And, you know, one of the main reasons why I think knowing these quick keys and knowing about these windows is, you know, as you start working on these sessions, right, if you have all these windows open, look how much room I have left now, like nothing, right? And that's not even all of them, right? So we're gonna get into all of these, right? But look how much room's left for me to arrange and just kind of, you know, make music, right? It gets a little crazy. So we're gonna go through all these. I think it's really, really important, right? And again, I'm gonna go slow with this stuff. I'm not in the, you know, there's a lot of YouTubers out there are just spitting things out really fast. I want you guys to follow along with me and, you know, bring this stuff up as I'm doing it. That way you're comfortable doing it and you learn it, okay? So again, Y is our library, I is our inspector, right? Let's bring up our next window, which is a really important one, which is going to be our mixer, right? And your mixers where you have access to all your channel strips, right? So this is where you do all, you know, you could do all your volumes all in one place, add effects, add an EQ, and, you know, we'll get into mixing later down the line. Again, this is an intro course, but for anyone who is familiar with those things, this is where you'll find it all in one place, right? You can have your master out, your stereo out, and you can even do mastering now in Logic, which is pretty cool, right? So the quick key to remember on this one is X, right? X marks the spot. So that is your mixer. And then let's talk about some of our edit windows. And depending, again, what track you have, will determine kind of what you see. Right now we have an audio track selected. So in here, this is where you would get an audio editor and you could bring that up. You could do some slicing. But if I had an instrument track selected and I pull up my editor, which the quick key for editor is E, right? E. Notice on the instrument track, it brings up something called a piano roll. And this is where you could edit MIDI notes. Right? If you're not familiar with MIDI, it's basically what keyboards use to talk to computers, right? It stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface, right? And in here is where you'll see what notes you played, how hard you hit them, how long you held on to them. That's the main information when it comes to MIDI. For the piano roll, you could also just hit P because we're on a instrument track. Right, and then as well as another editor, just if you're someone who has more of a classical background, you might want to remember N brings up your notation, which is your score editor, right? My background's not really that. My background's more in engineering and production, but say you're comfortable more with a scoring layout, right? That might be for you. Okay, so let's move it down. The next thing I want to talk about are our smart controls, right? And the quick key for that is B. And this is where you get quick access to some macros that Logic put together, right? You can see on this pad that we had, you'll have, you know, just some controls that they think you might want to use on that particular track. So notice if I were to pick a different sound, let's maybe find an arpeggio, which is my favorite here. Where's our classic ARP sound? Sure. right? So we have some filters here, how much delay you have. All right, this is your smart controls. Remember B. This will give you quick access to that. Right, these are pretty much predetermined what you see here, right? And if I had an EQ, this looks like this channel strip does have an EQ. You could have access to that quick, right? This is like a quick place to kind of mold your sound the way you want it. I probably don't use it that much, but for someone who's just getting started, I would maybe start there. You know, I like to dive in a little bit deeper, and hopefully at some point you will too. Okay, so let's see what our next went over editor. All right, so we have our smart controls, our inspector, and our library. I want to talk about our transport and our transport controls. Your transport is where you have access to your stop, play, record, right? The one thing I would suggest is come up here and click this down arrow and change this to custom. This is kind of the older layout, and I feel it gives you some extra information, especially with your computer. You'll start to see if you're pushing things a little too hard, maybe too many plugins, too many tracks, whatever it may be, your hard drive and CPU performance. Let's go over some transport controls. And the most basic one is, how do you start and stop a session, right? And that's pretty straightforward. It's spacebar, right? Spacebar will start and stop, right? Spacebar. Right, to go back to the beginning of your session, right, to take it from the top, you're going to hit return, right? And you'll notice this thing here. This is called our playhead, and this is going to go to the beginning. You know, I could be over here, and I'm going to, you know what, let me hear it from the top. Hit return, boom. The other keys I would definitely remember, quick keys, are going to be comma and period. And what those do are they let you move the playhead left to right, right? So instead of always coming up here and using your mouse to drag this thing where you want it, get in the habit of holding comma and period, right? And if you hold shift, comma, period, it'll jump by 8 bars, which in my last video, which was more DJ based, we talked about 8-bar phrasing, but that definitely applies to arranging and making music, right? So this would be a quick way to jump 8 bars. So maybe you want to add something new after 8 bars, or take something away, right? This would be a quick way to jump there and get there, right? And then probably one of the other most important quick keys or things to note is, how do you record? To record, you're going to just hold R, or tap R rather, right? Notice you heard a count in, right? And that was determined by this over here, which we'll talk about, our metronome. Right, you heard a 1-bar count in, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it dropped into record. And yeah, I didn't play anything on the keys, but let's maybe do that one more time, right? We have our count in, which if I right click over here, you can see it says 1 bar. So let's hit record again, and maybe I'll just play a couple chords. Right, so I hit stop and it recorded the chords I played. It's an arpeggio, so it just kind of rolled through those notes, right? So that is a simple way to record, right? The other thing you probably heard there, is the metronome, all right? And a metronome you're going to want to use, if you don't have a drum beat in your song from the beginning, you're going to want to start recording to a click. It's going to save you a big headache later on. Right, so the quick key to turn on and off the metronome is K, the letter K. Right, that's our metronome, and I would suggest coming into metronome settings and adjusting the tone a bit. I think by default it's somewhere. Let's see, let's make it over here. It's somewhere like over here. I turned my tone up a little higher so I could hear it through some things. Right, so. I would definitely adjust the tone of your metronome. Just right click on the metronome and get that going for you. Now you notice you might have noticed I made a loop here, or a cycle. And that's another thing in the transport I think it's worth noting and going over. How do you make a loop, right? So maybe you want to focus on one section for a bit and just kind of dive into it, right? The quick key to turn on and off your cycle is going to be C, right? That is definitely worth knowing. One other thing I'd maybe point out is if you make a selection, say you selected this region, when you click it, see how it gets highlighted? If you hit Command U, it'll make a cycle for whatever your selection's doing, right? So again, C turns off your cycle, on and off your cycle, and that's something that you're going to use a lot, right? Yeah, a lot of times, whether you're mixing or recording, you're just focusing on a certain section. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is our loop browser, right? And Logic comes with a pretty extensive loop library, which is all royalty free, meaning you could use them in your songs and not worry about getting sued later on. All right, so let's just go over that real quick and maybe build a really basic arrangement. So if you can follow along, the first thing we're gonna do is pull up our loop browser, and to do that, you're gonna hit O on your keyboard. Right, so let's go ahead and bring this over so you could see. Right, so O brings up our loop browser. You can see we have it here, and anything you could think of is pretty much in here, right? So let's maybe build a really basic arrangement here, maybe 24 bars. We'll do our 8-bar phrases, right? So first, let's find some drums, and you can see there's these sections at the top here. So we're gonna click instrument, we'll do beats, right? And our session is set at 120. So let's maybe sort these by tempo. You can sort things by tempo, and let's scroll until we're close to our tempo, which is 120. Let's see what we got here. Turn the volume down. I want to blast you guys out. Sure, that works. All right, so to bring in a loop here, and let me stop this. To bring in a loop, all you have to do is click it, drag it over, and you can even see in the arrange window it says drag Apple loops here to create tracks. As soon as I drag this under the last track, it automatically creates a new track here, and it does everything for you. And these, you can see the ones with blue are audio loops, right? So maybe for the next one, we'll show you what the other ones are. Now to drag this out, you could either just drag it by the corner. You'll see when you hover over the right side, you'll get this little loop icon, right? And let's maybe drag this out to bar 9. Actually, we'll drag it all the way out to 24, or 25 rather, right? So that would be 3 8-bar phrases, which again, we talked about in our last DJ video, if you happen to watch that. I'm going to delete this top track. Just click it, delete it. All right, so we have a nice fresh canvas here. And then I'm going to zoom a bit, which I was going to wait to talk about. But to zoom, there's a lot of different ways to do it. Let's just talk about one way for now, and that's Command and arrow keys. Right, I use this a lot because you have a lot of control with this one. So up and down arrows and left and right. Right, so do you want to zoom vertically or horizontally, right? So we have our beat here. We have a beat. Let's maybe find a bass now. So let's click this orange X, just kind of start fresh. Let's find synthetic bass, sort by tempo, and scroll to where about 120-ish. Oh yeah, so look at this. So over here, we have some loops that are green, right? And what that means is when you drag this in, it'll automatically create an instrument track and reference MIDI information, which again is keyboard information. You'll see it in a piano roll. So let's maybe find that and take a look at that. And sometimes it's good to have the track playing because it'll automatically play in time. Right, so let's maybe loop this for, what is that, 4 bars, And let's find a bass line. Alright, I don't want to spend too much time on this. Let's pick one, shall we? What do you like? Reminds me of some 80s. Alright, so let's bring this into the beginning of bar 9. Alright, so go ahead and follow along if you are at home. And we're going to drag this out. Remember, on the right side, you get this little loop tool will show up. Okay. Alright, so we'll drag this all the way out to 25. So now let's maybe find some shakers, right? We need some groove in here. So again, we'll find that under percussion. And you could also just type in words here. You have an actual browser, search engine, right? Shaker. We'll maybe do two different things. I like to sometimes do like a combination here. So we have shakers, 120. Let's see what this is. Shaker 2. Let me bring this up so you can see. Shaker 2. Sure. Bring this into bar 17. Right? And again, loop this out. I'm going to use my loop tool. You notice sometimes it's hard to grab things the way you want to when you're not properly zoomed. And I think that's why it's so important to know how to do that. So again, command arrow keys, and we're going to find our loop browser, our loop tool, right? And now we have a shaker starting at bar 17. Right. So one thing I'll do sometimes, and depending on the type of music, shaker, then maybe a tambourine too. So I'll just type tam, percussion, and around 120. Let's try and find. No. Let's play with the track. It's got a wood block in there. Let's do it. Alright, so we got some groove there. I mean, you could sit here all day and mold this, but one thing I like to do for, say, percussion, bring up our mixer, remember X, and maybe let's pan these, If you don't know, pan is basically separating your stereo field. Have something more on the left, right? Something more on the right, your left speaker, right speaker. So we'll have our, we got, I hit the wrong thing there, right? Left for our shaker, right for our tambourine. Right, again, really, really, really simple arrangement, right? But I want you to follow along, right? Because the next thing I want to show you is, one, how to save the session, and two, how to export this. Say I was like, hey, you know what? This is the jam. I need to write some lyrics, and I want to listen to it in my car, this and that, right? First thing I'd suggest is make a cycle for the whole track, and if you haven't done it yet, you want to just click up here. You'll see this ruler up here above where the ruler is. You can click there and make a selection for your entire track. And usually you want to leave some space at the end, because what if there's a reverb or a delay at the end of your song? You don't want it to just suddenly cut out. You want it to decay properly and naturally, right? So let's maybe listen to this, and I'll pull up the mixer. Maybe I'll just play with the levels a little bit, and then we'll go over how to save and then how to export. So let's just listen to this, and I'll pull up the mixer. I can maybe come up a bit. I don't want to blast you out. Yeah. 2, 3, 4. Alright, let's skip ahead. Alright, again, remember, comma, period. I could skip ahead here. Note, though, if you have a cycle and you move the playhead here, but hit play, guess where it's going to start? It's going to start at the beginning. The cycle is dominant. No matter where you put the playhead, it's going to want to play from the beginning of that cycle. So I'll just click over here. Right. So there we go. And, let's maybe extend this one more set of 8. Right. And I just selected all of these by just lassoing over it like so. And let's extend this out another 8 bars, which would bring us to, 33. And then maybe on 25 to 33, let's find a guitar just because. Oh, we got some action here in Hollywood. Let's find a guitar, electric. I want some funk. Funky guitar. Sure. And let's loop that out. And then pull up our mixer and just blend it to taste. Alright, so again, really basic arrangement. This is not the type of music I'd normally make, but for someone just getting started, I think it's really important to understand the loop library and maybe start there for your arranging and editing, right? So I have this session, I have this stuff going on. Let's first save it, right? So to save, just simply Command S, or you could find it under the File menu, but Command S, and you'll get this menu here, right? And it's asking, one, where do you want to save it? And, what do you want to save that's in the session? It's really important to make sure all these things are checked off, right? So and what that'll do is if you say you brought the session to a friend's house who has Logic, it'll make sure all the samples and everything you used in the session will show up on their system. If you don't check this off, you might get some error messages like saying something's missing, this and that. So yeah. The other thing to note is folder versus package. I feel like there's a debate on this, which one you should use. I personally like folder, and I'll tell you why. When you do a folder, when you go to bounce, which we're going to do next, it'll automatically create a bounce folder in your session folder. So let me show you what that's about. Let's first name this, right? And we'll call this Logic 1 bounce, or Logic 1 intro, right? And then, so you hit save, right? And now we're going to bounce this, right? Export this. I want to save this as an MP3 and I want to listen to it on my phone, in my car. I can email it, whatever it may be, whatever you want to do with it. So when bouncing, I'd recommend to make a cycle for the whole song and leave a little bit of a tail at the end, just in case there are any reverb, delays at the end there. It'll be natural and decay, right? And then we're going to hit Command B to bounce, right? Command B, and we're going to do MP3. Uncompressed would be if you want a waveform, wave file, or an AIFF, which is uncompressed. Better sounding, but bigger file size versus MP3, it's compressed. But honestly, 320 kilobits per second is a good sounding MP3. Most people don't notice the difference, right? So we'll click that. We're not doing any mastering or anything, so you could maybe do overload protection. If you normalize it, it will make it a little bit louder. I mainly leave it on overload protection because I do my own mastering later on, and I don't want to leave that on there and it end up messing up a bounce that I'm actually working on. So let's go ahead and bounce this. Cool. And notice it automatically made a bounce folder in that Logic 1 intro folder I made earlier when I saved the session, right? So here we go, Logic 1 intro bounce. It's going to scan everything. And now if I were to pull up my Finder and come over to my sessions here, let's see, media, sessions, right? And I recommend saving your sessions to an external hard drive if you have one. You're going to have, it's not going to make your system hard drive work as hard, right? So because you're pulling off a separate drive than your system's running on. So I think that's important to note as well. Notice it has a bounce folder here, and I have my bounce here. If I hit spacebar while it's selected, I could just listen to that. Here I go. We dancing. Any day now. Probably could have did a 4-bar intro, but again. Right, so you get the idea. This will keep going. I got everything in there, just skipping ahead. All right, so if you could do this, you could pretty much make a song here, right? That is the gist and mostly what I want to go over today. I did want to maybe touch on one other way of zooming, right? So we went and we talked about command and arrow keys, right? But the other way of zooming, which is another great way to zoom, is by holding Option and Command, right? Sorry, Control and Option, my bad. And once you do that, you'll see that when you hold Control and Option, you get this little magnifying glass pops up, right? And then once you hold Control and Option, make a selection of what you want to zoom in on, right? And you could keep doing this. And this is where you get into like really fine editing directly in your arrange window. A lot of the times you don't even need to bring up your edit window, right? So say I went in here and I did some things, and then I was done editing. I could just hold Control and Options and just click anywhere in the gray area, and it'll zoom me back out the way I came in. Hopefully this video helped you out. Be sure to like and subscribe. I'm going to be uploading a lot of these videos. We're going to go over audio recording, MIDI recording, editing, automation, so on and so forth, mixing, effects, everything. I'm slowly starting to upload these, record these, upload these. I have so many things I want to get out and share with you guys. So, you know, leave some feedback. If there's anything you want to learn about specifically, let me know. Also, feel free to join our school community. You'll find the link in our bio. Until next time, take care. Peace out.